this 20th meeting of the 12th Undergraduate Senate to order. I'm going to begin by calling the roll. Senator Pintar? Here. Senator Lipstein? Here. Senator Gale? Senator Gale?
Excuse me, here by proxy.
Senator Rogers?
Here.
Senator Zipman?
Here.
Senator Bardo?
Here.
Senator Pugh?
Here.
Senator Kenna? Senator Conover?
Here.
Senator Grant?
Here.
Senator Adeli? Senator Smith?
Here by proxy.
Senator Morrow?
Here.
Senator Borowski? Senator Lepore? Senator Spivak? Senator Sheehan? Senator Zanke? Okay.
See where I'm wrong.
So we have 11 out of 16 present voting, so we have quorum. Woo. Okay, so we're going to move on to the adoption of the agenda. Here's the agenda. Discussion. Okay, the agenda is going to be adopted without objection. We're going to move on to the adoption of the minutes from the 19th meeting. I just emailed out a updated version from Nancy. Is there any discussion on the minutes from the 19th meeting? Senator Rogers.
Yeah, on the 9th page, I moved to strike the comments made by my proxy. I don't disagree with them, it's just they're not from me. Should be on the record. Maybe it's not. Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, the minutes are going to be adopted without objection. Now moving on to public comment. Does any member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and esteemed senators. I'm Joyce DeSerce. I'm here to note again the absence of a parliamentarian. And already in this meeting, 2 violations of parliamentary law have been made. The first, how the minutes were taken up, and secondly, how they were amended. I won't go into detail on that, but I will note that as I'm sure we are all aware, in student politics, there are occasionally people who get very frustrated. And if someone got very frustrated and decided to sue the student government for some reason, the court would say, well, show me the minutes of your Senate meetings. And when the court realized that the Senate was not following the rules it laid out for itself, the school would say, oh my God, we need to shut this down immediately. Because parliamentary law is a body of law. By violating that body of law, you are violating a contractual obligation. And therein rises again the necessity of a parliamentarian, especially not only a parliamentarian in the general sense, a parliamentarian that offers suggestions on how to run the meetings efficiently, but a parliamentarian in the language of the governing documents. The governing documents provide that a parliamentarian shall be appointed. In the absence of such a parliamentarian is not only, as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, flaunting in the face of the legitimacy of the undergraduate Senate, but furthermore, it's a legal liability, and it's a real liability for the Senate. So, student senators and Madam Speaker, I simply urge today the undergraduate Senate to, during new business, take up a motion to recommend to the President that a parliamentarian be appointed as soon as possible. And I'm going to yield.
Any other people for public comment? Okay, we're going to move on to reports from officers. Vice President Self, feel free to speak.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Couple things. One was a success. So thank you, everyone. Coming out. It was a reason we've had like a very long time. So it was very exciting. And it's like talking about moving forward after last week's incidents. Programming. WIS did a really great job on their coffee talks with administrators. It was Thursday, went very, very well. I think working to both sides movements more like that. I think that WI is in a really good spot right now because like we're going to doing like reaching out to people, communities that we've been reached out to in the past. Another thing that I want to continue to do, yesterday, Caribbean Circle and USA had events. We sent out 8 pieces on school-wide emails. Some people got them. We got a good feedback about that. And yes, it's close to events. Something that I think we should really do more of is supporting permits already went on. Some people have really great events. I went to both events last night, yesterday, and they were both great food. It was always fun. But just being word out there about them is always something that I think we need to do a better job as student government. Yeah, that's it.
Any questions for Vice President himself? Awesome. We're going to move on to Comptroller and Children. Is that exciting?
Yeah. Sweet. Thank you. So I did kind of different home except about the program. I also went to MSA's banquet last night, which was really, really great. Very great event all together. Everything. Food was delicious. I do not have that left over for lunch today. This past week, yes. I've had my associate comptroller for human resources start going through the ethics and judicial standards, I believe, that of the portions of the governing documents are. And then let me see. And then the small budget that I think person can control. Out of the $6,000 that's in SG General, we have about say $3,900 remaining. And I would like to keep it moderate for the rest of the so I have about $1,000 buffer room overall for the entire. That's really my report. Just checking in with other pieces of Solomon's cabinet, just seeing where they are overall in terms of budgets. So that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions for me? Cool.
Awesome. We're going to move on to the Director of the Student Union Board, but it doesn't look like they're here. So I'm going to pass over that and go to the Director of Police. Of course. Oh, here's your slides.
Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. I'm going to keep this super brief in my ever-continued endeavor to use as little of your time as possible. So the first update is on something that's going to be happening this Wednesday, which is on the next slide, and it's the Rights Clinic. Awesome. So the Rights Clinic is something that's being hosted by the class of 2020. Thank you, Solomon, for having a full class of 2020. It's nice that we have a vice president who is putting an emphasis in the classes because now they're really being used as the tool for advocacy that they're supposed to be used for. So the president of the class of 2020, Kishori, had this idea to host a rights clinic in the Bridge to remind students of what rights they're already entitled to, both in general and in particular in light of the hate crime that we saw last week. And also to use it as an opportunity to solicit feedback on which rights should be expanded, what students are looking for, and how students feel that they could best continue to have access to this information. Because I understand completely that students, especially new students, are inundated with new information. A lot is being thrown at them, and if they don't have a full concept and full grasp of every single right they're entitled to, that is very understandable. So I think we can play a really important role in getting them that information, and so this will be a great opportunity to learn from students how we should go about getting that information. Kishori was nice enough to ask that Case sponsor it with them, so we're going to be with them at the Bridge on Wednesday. I believe it's going to be Wednesday at 8. We're just confirming that with Darcy at the Bridge. And it will obviously be advertised across our social medias and is open to all students. So the next topic is an update on the student rights card. So I'm happy to report that progress is moving forward on the student rights card and can now officially say, without any reservations and on the record, that there is no doubt about if the student rights card is going to be implemented. I'm pleased that we've moved to a position where all relevant bodies agree that it will be implemented. Now it's a discussion of where and when. And so as we're continuing those negotiations with HRL, we are putting a really big emphasis on the importance of having these inside dorm room doors so that every single student on campus, within 4 years, every single student who will have lived on campus will see this information presented to them very clearly. If they're having a confrontation with their RA, if their room has been searched by public safety, the advantage that you have when you close the door and all that information is right there for you, how to get in contact with an advocate, your rights as a student, your rights in the conduct process, it really provides an unparalleled opportunity. And there's a lot of administrators who understand that. And there's some administrators who want to see more student testimony, that there's a strong preference from the student body of having it on the doors as opposed to another location. So I'm telling you all this now because I would love the opportunity to partner with the Senate, with any individual senators, with any people in student government, to continue to present information to administrators about why it's so important. And so there's a number of different ways we can do that, and we can talk about that one-on-one. But if you're in the Senate and you're interested, there's a lot of ways that we can work together to make a really compelling case to the university as we move forward. Because the date of implementation will either be sometime in the fall semester or over winter break. And so the quicker we can make this case to them, the better, and then the situation is set in stone. And I also want to remind everyone that not only is this one of the biggest projects that we're doing in partnership with the RHA, the General Assembly and the RHA passed a resolution last year in support of the program, so this is now an ongoing partnership that we have with them. But it's also probably the biggest project that student government has ever had since the implementation of Empower AU. Getting this information on every single door, in every single dorm room on campus, will be a huge win for students, both because it's an unparalleled educational opportunity for students to be informed of their rights and have it as a tool, and because it signifies recognition on the part of the university that these are our rights that we can count on. So I'm very excited about it, and I just wanted to bring it all to you, both to update you so that you can keep holding me accountable, and so that we can find ways to work together on it. And then last. So of course, I'd be remiss not to update all of you on the work that we're doing in light of what happened this week and Tuesday evening. Over the course of the summer, we had been preparing research and recommendations that would compile together into a report about where we move forward when it comes to bias-related incidents. This has been something that we've been working on since May, and that we probably weren't going to release until December or the spring semester. But of course, because of the way things are going at our campus, we don't really have that luxury anymore. And a number of students have come to us asking us to release it sooner, and so our staff is preparing it so that it can be released sooner. Rather than making it a brand new report with a new name, we're not trying to make it fancy. We're not trying to throw a bunch of like unneeded like jazz and shine onto it. We're just calling it edition 2 of last year's report. Really, because while some things have improved, the situation is relatively similar to how it was a year ago. And so this is our second edition of this report that'll come out as quickly as possible with recommendations. It will provide a very well-researched, compelling case for why these recommendations need to be taken seriously and implemented as soon as physically possible. As soon as it's done, the Senate will get an advance copy. And when I say done, there's of course a number of people we're going to screen it through within the president's cabinet. But as soon as I can get it to all of you, just like I did last year, I will get it to all of you. And then of course we encourage and want your feedback on that. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that on that regard, all of you knew that CASE was doing something, that we were remaining consistent with our goals, and that we were keeping our commitment to the student body to make sure that we're fighting on this issue. Okay, cool. Any questions?
Sweet. Any questions for Director Mascara?
Yes.
So regarding the edition 2 report, are you guys, is the report going to be like a general meeting, or are you just sending that out to like the general student body?
So before anything is decided on and published, there's going to be a number of phases just like last year. And so we think it's very important to get a degree of student buy-in from the students that have been fighting on this issue much longer than we have. So just like we did last year, we have a list of coalition partners from the BSU, NAACP, MSA, Caribbean Circle, that Q&A, that are all going to have an advanced copy of this report. Depending upon that feedback and how quickly we get it, and then moving into the president's cabinet, we'll decide the timeline. But we're pretty adamant on moving as quickly as possible, primarily because some of these recommendations are ongoing, long-standing things that came from student feedback, and then like the university knows that we want. So for example, one really obvious one that was highlighted in student government's list of demands was the standalone violation. And so we make a very like compelling, research, long case for why that needs to be implemented. That's something that we know, like it comes from the student body. There's other ones that are new ideas that we want to make sure have the requisite buy-in and feedback from students. So I'd like to get it to the Senate as soon as within a week of today. It really just depends on how soon we get that feedback. Yeah, but thank you for the question.
How is since rebranding case, how has the outreach been working for you guys? And can Senate or any senators help in furthering case outreach?
I really appreciate that question. Honestly, it's been phenomenal. Just to be honest, like the name change was such a breath of fresh air. I like the name a lot more, and it's been a lot easier to connect with students. For example, we've already had, I think this week, we're going to be taking on our 30th case, and we just hit October, which is much quicker. The incline is much quicker than we had last year. I feel like the name is easier to remember. When it comes to how the Senate can help, anything that we can do in terms of collaboration partnerships are going to be helpful for us, because both for the Senate and for CASE, doing things together and getting our both of our sort of teams behind getting the message out is going to increase the number of students we reach. So when it comes to this rights card thing, I think that is a good opportunity for us to partner together, because administrators are asking for student testimony and student feedback, and with the Senate being like the representative body of the students at American University, I think there's a great opportunity for us to work together on soliciting that feedback and then pushing it to administrators. So what that looks like, we should talk about, but I would love to meet with you. I'd love to meet with anyone, and we can figure it out. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions for the director? Thank you.
Sweet, thank you, man.
Okay, can we move on to new business? Seeing none, we're going to go on to old business. And Bill 1617-023. Bill, or clerk will report the legislation by number and title.
Bill 1617-023, a bill to create the Special Committee on Diversity and Inclusion.
Okay, so we have CRP today, and CRP didn't offer any amendments to the bill, but did recommend it favorably to appear in front of full Senate and for passage. So we're going to move on to some discussion.
I move to amend the bill as received by the speaker.
Okay. So, let me just make it story. Okay, so this is the amendment. It's changed a couple things about like some clerical issues within the bill. Can you speak of them?
Yeah, just if the body remembers last week's bill, it's
We need a second first, right? Sorry, point of order, second. I'll give the second,
Okay, thank you.
just so we're good.
Yeah, my bad. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. So yeah, the bill that was offered last week had the Special Committee on Diversity and Inclusion broken down into 3 subsections. After discussing it with CRP, it was recommended that it should just be all in one subsection. Everything's laid out, the composition's still the same. Wording was just clarified, and that's really it. So I'm hoping everyone can read it really quick and see if you have any suggestions or other amendments after we vote on this amendment. That'd be great.
This is the only addition to the bylaws right here, right? That's like the only bylaw change.
Besides the numbering of the other subsections.
Oh, got it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Um, is there any discussion on the amendment? Yeah. Of course.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, of course.
The last section about requirements to meet, do other special committees have similar requirements? Or I guess what was the rationale behind, a mandatory number of meetings per semester?
Yeah, so I'll entertain the question. It's just because the finance committee does not have a designated requirement for meetings every semester, but given more of the campus climate right now and the importance of a special committee on diversity and inclusion, whether or not there's legislation, they can still meet to discuss some sort of policy or like the paths that they want to take or what they want the Senate to take kind of thing. So that's why we thought that at least 4 times it's not unreasonable to do per semester, but it's also a good amount that the committee is meeting on a regular basis.
May I add something to that? Also just for like, the point of it also just to be like part of CRP as well and just like have kind of like more of a seat at the table too, just so
Sweet.
so we're all on the same page and we know what's going on. And we can like work with legislation as well.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, Steve.
Oh, point of inquiry. Could we, during this, are we allowed to amend, to make it diversity and inclusion and equity? Can I do that?
Yeah, so let's do this amendment first, and then we'll
Yeah.
tackle some others.
Yeah.
Sorry, okay, any other discussion on this proposed amendment? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote. All those in favor of amending Bill 1670-023 to reflect this language, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Sweet, okay, the amendment to be adopted, this is the language now. Any other discussion or amendments to offer?
Yeah.
I think this is not highlighted. Oh, highlighted. Senator Gale has one.
Yeah, I was just gonna make Senator Payfar's amendment to change the name of the committee to diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Wait, point of inquiry. I would hit the backspace button because I think you might have deleted the.
Yeah, that's likely.
Again. Maybe you want
Well, this is just take
Did we
You mean undo?
that. Yeah, undo because I think you might have deleted the.
This is just like, I added a hyphen by accident, so I got rid of the hyphen.
It's so there.
What's the
Keep
problem?
clicking undo because you deleted the section, the subsection.
Oh my god. Okay, I'm thriving, let's go, okay. So there was a proposed amendment, is there a second to?
Yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yes, second.
So. So how did you want this worded?
Let's do committee on diversity and equity and inclusion. So the abbreviation is not that.
Say diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, do you want diversity and equity and inclusion, or do you want like comma?
Diversity, comma, equity, and.
Oh, God.
Do you want an ampersand or do you want an and?
What?
Isn't
Yeah.
that what an ampersand is?
No, I think that, do the word, I think.
Yeah.
Do the word.
The word?
Ampersand sounds so informal.
It's just and.
Okay, so it's a great social committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what you want, right?
Correct.
Okay, so. I'm really struggling with it. Don't believe this. Okay, can we all agree we understand what it says?
Yeah.
So that's yellow now. So this needs to be special video on diversity. Okay, where else does it say? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One more thing.
Centers on the serve.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Centers on the committee. Is this supposed to be on instead of above? Okay. Do you want to add that to it?
Yeah. Do you want to? Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay, cool.
oh, it's on or is it up? It's on. Sorry.
Any other ones?
You can hit first off. And then.
Yeah, that would definitely have been smarter. But no, I chose to do it.
Here we are.
So we're fine.
Okay.
Whereas the current ad hoc committee-
Point it. No. Point it.
That's,
Yeah.
that's really solved. Right. Anybody else good? Okay, so this is the amendment. Any other or any discussion on this amendment? There was a second, yeah. Yeah. I heard this. Any discussion on this amendment to change the title to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Any discussion at all? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote. So all those in favor of adopting this amendment, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, amendment's gonna be adopted. Sweet. Any other discussion on the bill? We spoke about the bylaws, so I encourage some discussion. So wait. Senator Dale Barkowski.
I mean, I think it's a really good idea, primarily because ad hoc committees like tend to come and go. And so there are issues that are longstanding commitments that student government has made when it comes to diversity and inclusion, like the mandated training that we're supposed to do every year that is just fallen by the wayside. And that's in part because people forget and we lose this institutional memory to like hold ourselves accountable and do that. And part of the problem is that there's no consistent year after year body that promotes diversity and inclusion. And so I think beyond just even making a statement of the value and importance of this committee, there's a tangible benefit in having year-to-year concrete reliability that things will get done. Having a committee that ensures that those things will get done, I think is valuable.
Yeah, this is something that we tried to do last year, and we just didn't come to fruition. Yeah, that word. And I'm glad to see that we finally taking some tangible steps towards making this a special committee to make it more lasting, so that it can do more lasting work, especially in the atmosphere of our campus now, really trying to help our campus.
Any other discussion?
I don't know how these things really look, but is there a section for like purpose, like a clearly outlined purpose, when not like it says like, oh, measures of diversity in or inclusion, like what is that like? If I was a student, I happen to like for some reason read every document and wanted to know what this was. Like I wouldn't. It says diversity in or inclusion. Like can we talk about like what that actually looks like, what it means, kind of make it more people know what it actually is rather than just like a name.
Okay. Senator Pugh.
Just to address the Vice President's concern, the reason why it's a little short and vague is because it'll like the more general it is, it allows the committee to do more than putting in the bylaws to specifically limit the committee on like however we want, like however we would word it. And that's why it says that specifically, because the more specific we get, that's the less scope that the committee would have on any issues pertaining to what they're designed to do or talk about.
Any other discussion on the amendment or on the bill as a whole? Senator Pugh.
I moved to amend the first paragraph in subsection 5 to state that it will be to consider legislation regarding diversity, equity, and or inclusion.
Can I say something really quick before we do that, or is there a way that I can comment before, or I guess I can comment when it's made? Sorry, I think it's a good idea.
Did you which one consider legislation regarding diversity? Equity and or inclusion? Is this the amendment you'd like to propose?
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong. That's what you want. Okay, so second to this amendment. Okay. Any discussion on, or do you want to speak why you changed this? About why you changed this?
It just reflects the name of the committee, but I'm open to hearing the discussion on it.
Discussion on the amendment, Senator Gale by proxy.
Yeah, mine is not so much a concern, it's only in light of what the Vice President mentioned. I agree that vagueness is helpful in making sure that this committee actually gets legislation, but now that we've added the word equity, I kind of worry that the Vice President is a little bit right in the sense that like equity is just is a huge term, you know, and so maybe like equity in something, like equity in under university policy or equity, just so now that that word's there, I do want to honor his concern.
Senator Blissey.
Yeah. Do you have any wording you're looking for specifically? Can you bring?
He has them. Yeah.
I think my concern was that I changed the point about being limiting, but I feel like also it without language that kind of is a little more detailed, it doesn't. There's not a lot of accountability. What diversity, what does that actually mean? Like, we could go from Senate to Senate, like 20 years from now, we could have a Senate that looks nothing like this. And they think diversity is one thing, but who we really, like, I just want to know, like, I would just like to see something that is, like, reassure students that, like, this work is actually happening, that it's for, like, them.
So maybe well, just out of what wording would you like to see as opposed to how would you define it? Diversity, or how would you like to define it?
I think it's like, I guess it's even just like saying like racial diversity, like gender, like just having word language that like students like, okay, they're actually talking about these issues, like, and then like, I think I'll leave that limiting, like it's just kind of more just like instead of limiting, broadening the language.
So, review.
So I'm just going to propose this, if the Senate would entertain adopting this amendment and then make the new amendment so we don't have to do an amendment to the amendment. Just
Any other discussion on this amendment?
I mean, I don't want to be complicated or difficult, but I still feel like maybe for the time being, equity in something, now that we're here, like, it's valuable.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Well, could,
Senator Marto?
Yeah, I just want to, I get that, should, but can we just go to adopt this, and then if we want to change equity in something, we can change the entire document of
Yeah,
equity.
let's do it.
So it should be
Any other
organized.
discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna vote on this amendment. All those in favor of adopting it, please say yay.
Yeah.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, this amendment's to be adopted. Okay, back to discussion on the bill as a whole. Is there any discussion on the bill as a whole? Senator?
I'd like to make an amendment to further change diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
Specifically equity.
Okay, so what do you want to propose?
I'd like to change, equity to adding racial and gender, I guess. I would say racial equity.
So you'd like it to say, you'd like to involve special equity on diversity, racial equity, and inclusion?
Correct. That's, or, no. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
You'd like to withdraw the amendment?
Yeah, I like to withdraw it.
Okay. Senator Pugh?
All right, so I move to amend the first paragraph in which it says legislation regarding, so after regarding, add the words racial, gender, religious, sexual, and no. After regarding, add topics of
Consider legislation regarding topics of
racial, gender,
religious, sexual diversity.
and ability.
Yeah.
Diversity.
Okay, so you want to say, did you use it with consider legislation regarding topics of racial, gender, religious, sexual, and ability, diversity, equity, or and or inclusion?
Yeah.
This is the language that you like.
In this amendment.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment? Okay, there was a second. Is there any, or would the author like to speak on this amendment?
I'm just looking to make it more defined, and I would love to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'd also like to suggest that we move into like like we deal with this amendment, maybe move into an unmoderated caucus to discuss this.
Oh,
Because
second.
there are limits on how many times people can speak on a certain main motion. So let's deal with this amendment, and then we can deal with the motion to do that if you guys would like to. So any discussion on this amendment? Senator Zitzman?
I feel like this is a good idea, just at a high level, but then when you get down to this specific version, this moves towards the limiting we were trying to avoid earlier. So if it would be easy to do this by amendment to amendment, that's fine, but otherwise we can find some other way. Instead of having all those categories of diversity, equity, and inclusion where they are now, perhaps move them towards the end, consider legislation regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion on topics such as racial, gender, and so forth. Include those things, but we don't have it, so these things are the limits of the committee.
Any other discussion on the amendment? President Thompson?
Yes, so, in terms of, sorry, agreeing with the bill, and I don't know if I just mentioned before, besides just considering legislation, like what else would this bill be doing in terms of, understanding like Senate's diversity, and inclusion makeup? Because what I'm wondering is if there's an action step, an actionable item in there, that could be used, say that but the undergraduate Senate committee specifically would publish a report that talks about where we've come in conjunction the last time. Like doing, okay, in terms of racial diversity, in terms of gender diversity, religious, sexual, whatever the identity diversity is, seeing how we holding ourselves accountable, seeing how Senate is doing and student government as a whole is doing. So if there could be, I guess it is more difficult to just make an amendment, or amend to amend the provision in this bill as an actionable item, that allows for Senate to, release a report, I guess, reporting our progress on these issues.
Yeah, I'd like to just answer that. I think that's a fantastic idea. I have no problem with adding a report. I think that's a really good way to hold ourselves accountable. Just for like clarification purposes, the purpose of the bill is really just because as far as like CRP, and it's an ad hoc, so it doesn't really have as many abilities as like a standing or special committee. So it's just to make sure that we're in CRP, we can like have legislation brought to us, and just so we have more acting power, and the diversity inclusion committee will stay for the time being.
Let's remember that we're just discussing this amendment. Senator Pugh.
I withdraw my amendment and move to an unmoderated caucus until discussion expires.
Okay, so you're moving to suspend the rules? You're moving to?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Okay, this requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of suspending the rules, move to an unmoderated caucus, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, now we're going to be in an unmoderated caucus. This means there's no limits on how many times you can speak, how long you can speak for, which just gets some good work done. Okay.
So,
go ahead.
I think it would be really beneficial if we have a section, kind of listing like requirements for things that the committee needs to like do every term. I don't know how we want to like list the language period, but that way we can cover like what both Solomon and Taylor said, and make sure that like the committee is being held accountable for what they're created to. So maybe if we add like a section completely to like requirements.
Okay, is that a motion?
Sure.
To amend?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your motion to amend?
There's no suggestion for conversation.
Are there questions when with this equitable suspended? I like Haley's point. I would, if we are to start working on an amendment for that, I would probably end it after the requirement for meetings. So just add it as another part after that. What the committee should be part of.
Okay, let's start with having like bi-weekly report or monthly report.
Basically, I agree with everything that's going on here, but I think it's just a little bit unorganized. And also, I think like we don't have all the committee members here from the committee. This legislation was only supposed to, I don't think it already existed. This is only supposed to make it a special committee so that it has more power and more influence on Senate action than the CRP. I agree with everything that's going on here, but I just think like we need to like organize about this and like find out like with the rest of our committee members find out what our purpose should be. Because in the past, there hasn't really been a purpose for these committees. Only just been there and just as Solomon pointed out, just kind of just been words on paper in the bylaws. And it's important to make that right and to make that more specific. But I don't know if it should be right here, right now, because we don't even know what to put on or what to add. And I think it'd be more better to organize ourselves at our next meeting, and then to come back to Senate next week and say, this is what we want to add to the bylaws. So like make this a standing committee now, and then go back into this is what we want to add to the bylaws, so that the speaker can hold us accountable.
So is that a motion to table this legislation?
No,
not table the legislation, because it's important that, especially even next week, it's important that CRP is represented it's important that the committee is represented by CRP, but to allow like time for all of us to discuss this, to even meet with the different cabinets and members of the exec board, to decide, like, to our own committee members, decide like what is best for us. I think we're just getting off track, that's all I'm saying.
Do you wanna, I would agree with most of that. Honestly, I don't see a problem with adding a report on this, and then we can come back and like add more language to it, if that's fine. If we wanna start with like the report, we can add that. I think that could be quick. But as like anything else, I think it should just be like amended next week. Like, let's pass this, we'll have a report on there, and then we'll come back and we'll have a list of like designated like responsibilities.
We direct a question to the acting chair of the ad hoc committee.
It's unmoderated, so you guys.
Oh, okay. How many members do you have in the ad hoc committee right now? There's seven
Seven.
currently.
Yeah.
And
But one of them.
we have how many here right now? Four.
That's boring, but
Yeah, well, but I think I do understand, having the committee make suggestions, but at the same time, like, we have almost the entire exec board here already, we have most senators here already, and since this affects more than just, and this wouldn't even create the committee until the next session anyway, so this is a Senate thing, we should all just discuss it now while we are in an unmoderated caucus, and that way we have more input than just the ad hoc committee.
yeah.
So,
I was just saying.
Yeah. No, I hear what, I hear what you're saying, but I hear that.
President Johnson, can you give us more of your thoughts on what you want to see from the special committee?
Yeah, I think that this special committee specifically could do, it has a lot of potential. I think that's why there's the bill to begin with, to make sure that it's a consistent and standard part of student government. I think that the committee, I think my bigger vision, and I guess it's important to preface this entire conversation, my bigger vision for this entire academic year is that student government does things, like point blank. But the student government is doing things that make sense, and that we're strategic, and that we're thinking things through, and that we're utilizing what we have the ability to do and maximizing those efforts. So I think that the bill so far, like, it looks good. I think that it can always be made better. So I think in terms of in terms of the report, I think it would make more sense because it must meet, or I guess the special committee must meet 4 times per semester. Then it's like, okay, then there should be a report by each time, but at least a semester-long report, so that we can show our progress on where we are with this, but also look at what issues are coming up on campus in order to make statements or other things, but like, what can we do within our power as representatives of the student body to maximize the use of this? Because I think that if it's just a committee just to talk about it, and there's not actionable items that we can then utilize, there's nothing that's holding us accountable. Then who's to say that, like following the question, who's to say that like later on down the road, all this is still a special committee that loses its purpose? So I think that the most important thing right now is to make sure that the skeleton for this bill is strong and succinct. And then if there needs to be amendments later on to further specify the nitty-gritty details, I think that should happen. But I think it's more important for us to hammer out the skeleton first and make sure that that's succinct and very thought through, rather than do it the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And just while we're like discussing that, something that I would really like this committee to have a purpose for is to delegate people to be attending cultural organizations meetings and stuff. So when we have a designated schedule, so if you're on diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have a responsibility to go to these many like cultural organization meetings like per month or like per semester, so that we know that student government is there, and also just to hold us accountable so we're hearing our constituents.
And I think that should be expanded to not just focusing on the members of this committee, but be expanded to the entire like Senate and just representatives from student government. I don't want this bill to look as though we're setting a quota of how many minimum, because people will just do the minimum rather than do it at all. I think that it should be utilized for us to make a very intentional effort to expand our reach, but also look at how are we strategically marketing? Who are we trying to bring into student government? How are we representing our constituencies? Because if you look at the makeup of SG right now within Senate, it's not as diverse as the entire student body is. And I think that we can do better. I think that that's important. And I think that that's where this bill can hold us accountable, and by making sure that we are actively pursuing efforts to expand diversity, inclusion, and equity in student government. And I think that that's where my bigger focus was.
So just like to respond to another thing, I think those are all really important things in order for us to do it so that whatever changes are things we implement are long standing. That would be like a bylaw change, right? So
What's the question?
okay, I'm under the impression after all the conversations we're having that in order to accomplish what we're trying, like what we're saying we want to do, which I think is really important, that this legislation should pass, or not, we should vote on it as is, and then amendments should be made to the bylaws on what this committee dash Senate as a whole is responsible for doing in terms of like diversity, inclusion, and being involved on campus and equity, so that those are like long-standing changes that will be there and like be something that we're all held accountable for more than just this bill, right? So if my impression is correct, which I could be wrong, it's kind of like by just a open statement, we should go, or end summary caucus, go on the bill, and then the Sophia and the chair and her committee should meet and make amendments to the bylaws proposed.
Is that a motion to reinstate the rules?
So moved, so let's read the
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a motion to reinstate the rules. Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion on the motion to reinstate the rules? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to voting on the motion to reinstate the rules. All those in favor say yay.
Yeah.
Those in favor, those opposed, nay. Okay, so the rules are gonna be reinstated. We're still discussing Bill 1617-023. So any discussion on the bill, Senator Pugh?
I do move to make an additional amendment after, where your cursor is right now, and to state that the Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, after it says times per semester period, it should be a report shall be published by this committee. Stating what was discussed during the meeting. I should publish it. A report shall be published after each meeting. During that said meeting.
Okay, so the language you'd like is a report shall be published after each meeting by the committee stating what was discussed at this meeting. Just say the language, just say the
Yeah,
language you
what
want.
was discussed during that said meeting.
Okay, so discussed during that said meeting, that's the language you like? Okay, is there a second to this amendment? Okay, there's a second. Would the author like to speak on why he made this amendment?
it's just something additional, at least to sort of start moving forward in the right direction, at least get this committee to publicize like what, or report on what they were discussing and if they had any actions or goals in place during that meeting, just so that the Senate can be informed and the rest of the student body can be informed about what the committee's doing. Now, of course, this doesn't entail everything that we've been discussing, but at least it's something in additional to sort of work towards the accountability factor.
Okay, is there any questions with author? Special amendment, Senator Grant?
Yeah, how would, okay, so first, thinking about after every meeting, that sounds to me like the minutes. So what did you have envisioned in terms of that? Like, did you want it to be like more of a public thing or just the Senate? And then two, I don't really see the purpose of, for the report, I think that achieves what Taylor had envisioned. I don't think something that goes out every single meeting is kind of achieving that goal. I think it's more of a long-term thing that discusses action items and discusses progress. So just the first question again, how would you envision this be different than like the minutes?
I'll entertain that. It just like though meeting minutes should be taken at every committee meeting, there's nothing done with them. Like there's no, like I have not been able to find any published meeting minutes for any committee. So at least having the idea that these will be published, and if it is the meeting minutes, it's still a report on the committee. But that way anyone can access what was discussed in this meeting, because those meeting minutes can be lost sometimes without being held accountable for them.
We have a discussion on this amendment, Senator Barto.
Yeah, just go off of Alma's point. I think she's exactly right. Like, these minutes are supposed to be published anyway, or my understanding of that. And I know we're trying to do something, but the doing something needs to like have purpose. If you can't just like be repetitive in what that is. I mean, I think to go back off of Senator Lixing's point, like, we should just vote on this, making the ad hoc committee into a special committee, and then decide later and afterwards when we're more organized to understand what we want, not just sitting here for 20 minutes trying to add in things because it looks good. We can decide where that is and where to go from there. I just want to advise them on that.
Just a reminder that this doesn't go into effect until the next session, so it wouldn't make the current ad hoc committee on diversity inclusion a special committee. It goes into effect in the 13th Senate. Senator Gilbert Rossi.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. I appreciate what Senator Pugh is attempting to do, because responding to the concerns of the Vice President and the President are important because the points they're making are correct. What I'm worried about is that, like, we don't even read our own bylaws. So we know in this room that we need to do, that this report has to be issued. But I'm worried about future committees not recognizing this or reading this. And so the reason why I think I'm going to vote against this is because a lot has been said to the Senate about the need to really, really make sure that students can hold the Senate accountable and be aware of what the Senate is doing. So I think there's a valuable opportunity to rise to the occasion of that test by coming up with subsequent directives, legislation that says for all committees, this one included, they need to be on the website, their meetings need to be published well in advance, the location has to be published well in advance, and something beyond just the monotonous minutes that are never read should be released. And that's not directed to you. I think you specifically, Senator Pugh, do a good job at like being accessible. But there's clearly a test out there for the Senate. I think the Senate should rise to the occasion. I just don't think it needs to be in a bylaw where it's going to be forgotten.
Yeah, I just want to retweet what Will just said, and for me personally, as the standing chair of now, I have no problem with like publishing minutes and making sure that's accessible to everyone. What I would envision would be releasing minutes so that they're public and as well as accessible, but then posting a report every semester, because if we're posting monthly, bi-weekly, there's not really much to show. If we're just throwing up a blank piece of paper or like, we talked about this and stuff, that's not really much to do. If we have something every semester, we have something people can look back at and be like, that's like progress, as well as like showing tangible progress by semester.
I think that the desired effect of the amendment could be reached through means of like live streaming meetings, or publicizing like where they are and just making sure that they're more well attended by the public and just having people there. I'm still kind of shaky on the difference between what it would be in the minutes versus the report. Personally, I feel that those would have the same effect, but I think that adding something like a live or publicizing meetings would be like what that is doing.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw my amendment.
Okay. Any other discussion on the bill as a whole? Vice President Sell.
I think we're still not hitting, I think, the heart of the issue here, and that is that this bill has no teeth. We're looking at a bill that just, there's no action items, no tangibles, no things that require that we hope to receive, we hope to get out of this bill. I think stated, and I think that it's kind of worrisome that if we read this bill, there's nothing that I can say that, okay, so we expect this to happen now. Like what tangible changes are we going to achieve with this bill? I think that we need to be a little, I've been saying the past few bills, we've seen people, students, they want things to happen. And if we created a subcommittee and inclusion, like, clearly, okay, that's nice, but what's going to happen? How's my life going to change? As a student color, as a marginalized community, how is my life going to change because of this bill? I think that's what we need to really think about.
I would, although I definitely see the concern, I would disagree with that because the problem right now is that the ad hoc committee doesn't really have any power, and just having power is change, and that's something that people are concerned about. So this is, just to clarify, this is actually a movement that Yami was really working really hard on last semester and wouldn't go through because she was, especially with her, was doing a fantastic job. I would honestly say one of the hardest like working chairs that whole semester since she's been here, and she was running into a lot of walls because the ad hoc committee did not have enough power to really do anything. So if we're at CRP, we can work with legislation, that does actually do something. And maybe to someone who doesn't understand student government as well would be like, well, that doesn't do anything for me, but it really does, because when we are able to go like get over those humps and actually work with like the legislation, that does a lot more than what meets the eye.
Senator Pugh.
Just to clarify for the Vice President, I hear your concerns, and I want to just make the distinction that this, I think, is a good first step, like Senator Lixine was talking about. On, like, we passed this bill. This establishes a special committee for any for all the next Senate sessions. Then maybe working this week, and I would love to meet with you and the other E-board members with some of the other senators to make another bill or a some larger addition to the bylaws that Senator Lixine was talking about that holds the Senate accountable and making the actual steps. So I think what Senator Lixine was pushing for was making a special committee in this bill and then working on another part to the Senate like work requirements of senators in another part.
President Johnson.
Yes, so I think what Solomon was getting at, which I want to reiterate, is the fact that this bill can do more right now. It has the potential to do more than what it's doing in the skeleton. I think that what Solomon was talking about was that right now, this bill was a great first step, and I agree with that. But I think that it does us a disservice to go back and have to keep going back when we can make it strong right now. So I think that that's what, as executive board member, and I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the executive board right now, that this bill is good. It can be great if we hammer that out right now and get it purpose up front rather than having to come back and keep going. Because that can happen later on with the 13th Senate, but they can refine that. I think bills can be made and amendments can be updated and bylaws can get changed, but those are long-term goals. And I think that with moving forward, before you all decide to vote on this bill, I think this bill should have more structure.
Senator Bartow.
I think there's two arguments here. One is an argument for making this an ad hoc committee, and one argument is making the committee as a whole have more structure, have more balance. So I think those are two separate, exclusive things. We've been like sitting here now for like 30, 40 minutes trying to talk about this and trying to add things, and we're not all sure what to add because first I'm going to open it up to an unmoderated caucus, feel we can talk to each other because we're going to hit the motion with it. I think it's important to just have this be a standing committee vote on this piece of legislation now, and to go back and to hyper out the committee's purpose and the committee's goals. And actually, speaking from a lot of the committees, hash out a lot of their goals too, because I know being as the chair of the CUA, the Committee on University Advocacy, there's not a list of identified goals or things that we have to do either. So I think that can be also an overall thing. So maybe we just have to really like separate these arguments. No one's disagreeing with each other, just to hash this out first, then to have meetings with the executive board, meetings with our own committee and the rest of them who are not here, to identify plans and actions to incorporate in this legislation so we can hold ourselves accountable next year, because we've just been sitting for like 40 minutes trying to decide what to say, and everyone's just going back and forth on each other.
You go twice, right? Senator Rogers.
Yeah, so I might be missing something, but I think the general goal of this, like has been said, was to make the special committee have, like, be a full committee and have representation on CRP. But my understanding of this is that it wouldn't do that immediately and would only do that for the next Senate.
That's correct.
So I'm not sure what the push is to like get it through now without adding things that will actually make a difference now for students. So like if the bill were to like immediately add representation from the committee to CRP, I could understand wanting to get that done, but since this doesn't do that, I'm not sure what the push is right now.
Both of you, what's your point?
Yeah, so if this, let's say like whatever, we wait on this till next week, it gets passed next week, then do members get representation 2 weeks from then?
So the thing that's like, this clause is the reason that it doesn't go into effect until the 13th session. 13th Senate. It's just the inaction clause.
Can we take that out?
Is that a motion?
Okay, can I make motions?
To amend it?
Yeah,
You've spoken.
because I think that, I mean, it doesn't matter. No, I just was clarifying where that came from.
Is that a motion to amend?
No, if someone wants to make that motion to amend, or if we just want to wait again, to not have it on CRP next week, but I'm saying, to go back to Senator Rogers is saying that we can allow that to happen.
Senator Gale by proxy.
The reason why I'd be against that, and I see why it might make sense to do it, but the reason why I'm against it is the point has been made, and it's a good point, that currently the composition of the Senate does not accurately reflect, or to the greatest extent it could, the student body. And so I guess if we were to add these, the chair and the vice chair to CRP immediately, we might not be electing from the pool of the best potential people that represent the committee that's on CRP at this time. And the last thing I'll say, because I don't want to talk too much, but I think that just the act of making this a standing committee, a special committee, does provide tangible value and benefit. But I do hear what the executives are saying, in that if maybe we don't act now to make sure that there's some additional teeth, then we might the Senate might forget to really understand and honor the importance of this. So maybe instead of, or in addition to the requirements of meetings, giving the committee one additional responsibility. So there would be more like a clearly rooted additional goal or role of the committee. So there's less of a chance for this to fall by the wayside and be forgotten. So something like being responsible for seeing that the mandatory diversity inclusion training that SU passed is included. That's just an idea, but something where there's a little more written accountability while we're here now, I guess. That's all.
Senator Sister, did you have something?
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment. I move to amend the bill in the, I think it's subsection 7, where it talks about the Special Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion would be the 4 meetings per semester. Yes, at the end of that subsection,
Subsection 5 or subsection 7? This is 7.
Of the one with 4 meetings.
Okay.
Yes.
5.
Okay. So there, I would like to add, after that sentence, another section that says this committee shall publish at the end of every semester a report detailing the progress on all initiatives undertaken by the Senate to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion within the student government and on the campus.
After a report detailing the progress of
all initiatives undertaken by the Senate to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in student government and on campus in general.
Is this the language that you like?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Would the author like to speak on why they proposed the amendment?
Yes, I hope this is more of what the executives had in mind rather than just publishing the minutes of a more comprehensive report on what's actually being done. So I would like to hear what everybody has to say about it.
Any discussion on the amendment? President Johnson?
Yes, I think this is what we're trying to talk about. It's adding action steps, adding some way to do something more than just saying we have this committee, cool, but we have this committee and this is what we need to do. I think that when we make bills, we need to be strategic and making sure that, one, we understand our bylaws, one, we understand our documents, we understand that like it's not enough just to have it. We have to articulate what that purpose is. And I think that this helps to give this bill on this.
Council Michelle?
Yes. Okay. My suggestion would be that the committee should publish a record of its communications with other organizations on campus, especially the ones representative of their goals of reaching out to racial groups on campus, looking for like LGBTQ groups. Also important, what I think is important is reaching out to ASAP and disability rights advocates, because I know of students on campus who have had problems not only with ASAP but with the university trying to improve their disability. So I strongly recommend that the community, that the committee and the community, the committee publish what it says to those groups, and it shows that they're in communication and that they're actually putting their money there.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that as a student who actually does benefit from ASAC, that's very important. I do know some of the people who would be able to work with us with that, so thank you.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Senator Mora?
I don't know if it's been said, but I think I would like to just see language and like it says detailing the progress of what you've done, but I think that it would be great to have some objective goals included in that report and saying this is what we've done, this is how we would like to progress throughout the semester, and having that kind of check on what we've been doing and what we want to do, and having people be aware of what we want to do, like from after that report, I guess. It's just, I would like to see language in that.
So, yeah, so then a motion to amend the amendment to say, a report, I really can't see, like, yeah, a report detailing, the progress, timeline, and goals of all instances of the system. I think maybe putting a timeline requirement would give us a tangible outline for it.
Okay, this is the amendment. The amendment is just the language that you like. Goals.
Yeah.
And goals.
Yeah.
And goals, one word. Sweet. Is there a second to this amendment? Second. Cool. Would you also like to speak on why they proposed such amendment?
Wait. We do. Yeah, can we do timeline, plan execution?
Is that an amendment?
Instead of end goals, do timeline and planned execution.
So you'd like to amend your amendment?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so what language, okay, well, we need to. Okay, what language would you like to propose?
Detailing the progress, timeline, and planned execution. Instead of end goals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're discussing the amendment that's just the blue writing. Planned execution.
I move to vote on our.
Yeah. Okay, I see a second, first of all. Second. Okay. There's a motion to vote on this amendment. Is there any discussion on the motion to vote? Okay.
Second.
Okay, the amendment's adopted without, with the unanimous consent. Okay, now we're just talking about the pink writing. Okay. Would you either like to speak on why you propose this amendment?
Sure. So I just think that maybe requiring a timeline and steps that the committee would be going about would provide like a layer that we don't really have to.
Okay, any discussion on the amendment, to the amendment? Senator Zinsman?
I think detail is good, but I do hesitate a bit to include execution in there because just as government structure in general, the committee can't execute anything. That is why it's called the executive branch. It executes. So the committee can research things and legislate things and advocate for things, but it can't do anything by itself.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Senator Pintar?
I'd like to move to approve with unanimous consent.
So you'd like to, okay, okay. Any objection to adopting the amendment by unanimous consent? Okay, now we're just talking about the yellow ink. Any discussion on the yellow ink?
Just to go to your point, I think that, I understand what you're trying to say. I just feel like the language should still be included because I think it is hoped that the branches will work together in that. A lot of the issues we had before, the branches being divisive and not trying to work together. I think maybe having that in there will kind of be a nudge to say, hey, we're gonna work with the executive to make sure it's this kind of thing.
President Johnson.
I think it would be a really good suggestion if that's what we want to accomplish, if we put in there that they want the executive branch to execute the initiatives undertaken by the Senate. Because I know that my cabinet is like chomping at the bits to have things to like deal with Senate, but it can't be done if we don't expressly state that, because in the event that this moves forward and later on down the road, Senate and exec don't get along at all, they're not gonna work together to execute that. So I understand what you're saying, I just think that it should be mentioned in that, and that's.
Senator Gilbert Roxy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the president. The only concern I've had with it at all was that there's now a committee that deals with basically, I would say, all of what CASE does in terms of policy. So it's nice to see some sort of language that would encourage, or I don't want to say mandate, but like require some back and forth between the executive and the Senate, so that we're not arguing with one another, sending each other in different directions. So I think that's a good idea.
Any other discussion on this amendment to the legislation? Senator Zinsman?
To amend the amendment, the and there at the beginning of the second line. So can we add a comma after that and? And can we also make that a brighter color?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and working with the executive branch, comma. So that's my amendment.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment, the grading, the amendment, the grading? Is that a second?
I would second it, just doesn't make sense in the context of the rest of that sentence.
Okay,
But I like what you're trying to do, you know.
Okay, is there a second? There's no second.
Yeah, I'll withdraw it.
Okay, back to just this amendment.
Motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Okay, any objection to adopt this amendment? Okay, amendment's adopted. Now we're just back on the legislation as a whole. Any discussion, Senator Grant?
Yeah, Taylor, point of inquiry, because who's the title of the person that would work with this committee specifically?
Right now, that would be my director of inclusion, and that's wrong. So that's why I'm saying that a lot of it is back and forth right now, because cabinets can change. That's the other part, is like because cabinets can change, with each president, you can adjust how your executive board or how your cabinet is structured. There's no promise that the executive board will always have the director of inclusion in that. So what I was saying was, because right now, there's not, the bylaws have not been amended to mandate that there is always a director of inclusion on the president's cabinet, that in order to enforce this with making it so that the executive board has to work with this community makes sense, because in the event that there's no longer a director of inclusion, then there's still that required conversation between Senate committee and the executive board and pushing forward this legislation.
Another point of inquiry for Taylor. Just just for the sake of, just so we're not discussing this later, what would you like the language to be that the committee works with someone on the executive branch, period, and not with the diversity and inclusion, because that's not in the bylaws yet.
I think it should just be the executive board as a whole, not just someone on the executive board, because it can include all of us, but it's just a matter of how that happens until we get to such a point, if the bylaws get amended later on down the road to dictate what has to be in, like what is going to be standard on cabinets, because that changes so frequently with each administration, and because it's not mandated, it's wishy-washy. So 10 years from now, like, we could get to a point where AU thinks it's like a post-racial society. Like, there's no need to have a diversity and inclusion like officer on the executive, like in like an executive cabinet, and it's just like not there. Yeah. And then there would be no accountability of Senate or the executive board to enforce this bill. That means this bill is very, very crucial to pushing SG in the right direction.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I would like to move for an amendment. Is that how I say it? Let's move to amend what we were just amending.
Okay, so you want to change this?
No, I just like to add on to it.
Okay, sweet. What language would you like? Is this where you want it?
Yes.
Okay.
This committee shall also collaborate, report to, and work with.
What? I would disagree with the report part.
Okay.
Okay. Keep going. Sorry.
Not report to? Okay. Shall also collaborate with the executive branch to ensure that the executive branch carries out the can I change carries out or demand or addresses the concerns of the committee?
This is the language that you like.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Okay. Would the author of the amendment like to speak on why they propose the amendment?
I'm really looking forward to working with the executive branch in the future with the 13th Senate, now that we have this, so that we can all be on the same page and we can also have the executive branch working on what we discussed in the committee.
Any discussion on the amendment? Are you Senator Gale?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I'll be Gale. That's my,
Okay.
yeah, that's my bad. I was just gonna propose an amendment.
Yeah.
To just change it to this committee shall also collaborate with the executive branch, when crafting their initiatives.
Okay, so you're amending the amendment?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So you'd like to say?
Okay, when crafting their initiatives, period, and then strike the rest.
Yeah, I think that might be.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it falls the second, that falls over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Format, top left. Strike through.
Thank you. Okay, is there a second to the amendment to the amendment?
Second.
Cool. Would the author like to speak on why they should propose this amendment to the amendment?
I just think it's clear.
Sweet, any discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Senator Rogers?
Yeah, I would say it is clear, although with their initiatives, it's not clear like whose initiatives it is, like the executive branch's initiatives or the committees.
So we should say the committees.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be mine.
Okay, are you proposing an amendment, the amendment to the amendment?
Yes.
Okay,
Second.
the language is.
The committees.
Yes. Is this what you want?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're getting there, people.
you seconded this?
Yes, I do.
Would the author like to propose, or like to?
No, I would just like to motion we vote right now, just consent to accept that amendment to the amendment.
I second that.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the orange ink being adopted into the pink ink? Those opposed, or those in favor, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, so now, the pink is the amendment we're considering. Any discussion on the pink? Senator Pintar?
I'd like to move to vote looking in this consent.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion to moving to vote? Okay, we're voting on deciding to vote right now. So if you say yes, then we're actually gonna vote on the pink ink. Okay, all those in favor of moving to vote, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, now we're actually gonna vote on the pink ink. All those in favor of adopting the pink ink, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, so this is great. Okay, so now the amendment is just the yellow ink. Any discussion on the amendment? Senator Zisman?
To adopt the amendment by unanimous consent.
Any objection? Okay, adopted without objection. That's part of the bill now. Any more discussion on the bill as a whole? Senator Grant?
Just with that last amendment, do we think, how would people feel about adding in like time commitments and stuff, or is that something we should wait on?
I think that's
I think
We
that
have-
was kind of vague.
We have them 4 meetings this semester.
So are we just saying it's expected that executive branch must be at the 4 meetings like that?
No.
Or should that be?
Is that confusing? Does it look like that's what we're mandating?
No. All I'm saying is, do we think we need to specify like what that means, collaborate?
Oh.
You know.
I don't.
I think
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
Any
Or we should just leave it.
Okay,
I think we
so,
should leave it.
I think we should, yeah, we can pass
So
that
we'll
out.
just-
okay, any other discussion on the amendment?
Oh, on the
Or on the bill as a whole, sorry. Guys, please.
Oh, sorry.
Any discussion on the bill as a whole?
Yes.
Senator Rogers?
Okay, sorry, I have to plug in my computer real quick. So this is just me spitballing here, but we were talking about adding more teeth to this bill, and I'm not sure if this is the right place for this, maybe another. But have we considered at all some sort of language in the bylaws talking about ensuring that elections are more inclusive and equitable and diverse? And if so, maybe this is the time to do that. And I have some language if people think that that might be a good idea. So any thoughts on that?
Discussion? Senator Zisman?
I feel like this is a good idea, and it might be relevant to the committee specifically, but I feel like this is a broader issue that goes outside of the committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion within the Undergraduate Senate, so it might be better served as a separate amendment to the bylaws after we pass this one.
Discussion, council?
So the thing that I would say, like, I would really like to see this committee proposals like that. But if this is going to affect until the Lee session, then this is going to affect until after the Lee session, then it won't affect this incoming classes. I think, or the
Senator Pugh.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo Senator Sitzman's point that this bill is going to work specifically for the special committee. I feel that the point that Senator Rogers brings up is another piece of legislation that the Senate should work on coming after this bill.
Any other discussion on the bill as a whole? Senator Grant.
So I believe that the one way to, or one of the best ways to ensure that this kind of like keeps its purpose and sustains peace, and that in the 13th Senate we actually still make progress, is having someone that's currently on the committee, or currently on the ad hoc committee become, if they are elected again, become the chair of this new committee. Would that one violate bylaws, or is there a way to write that into this?
You're asking me if I could
mandate that someone that is currently on the ad hoc now will become, out of that pool of candidates, will become the chair of it, to ensure sustainability and progress.
So the language of this bill does say that the chair and deputy chair should be elected in the usual manner. The usual manner is like an election of all the full senators, so I don't think I could dictate that the first chair of the committee would be a certain person. Does that make sense?
You said you can?
No.
You can't.
No. It would be an election.
How could we make that happen?
That we mandate who the first chair of the committee is.
That would have to be somebody that's currently on the ad hoc.
Well, that's also saying that like we're guaranteeing that they were running for re-election and that they win re-election.
Right, which I'm saying, if they were to.
Okay. You'd have to you could amend the language, you could amend this saying that, where's the part that says? Because this is the only problem. This. And then you'd also have to change like more of the bylaws saying that special committee chairs are elected. So you have to change this, all of this, and then then bylaws that are like not in this bill at all, which theoretically you could do if that's a motion to amend. Okay, and then you can tackle that. Senator Pugh.
Just to address Senator Grant's point, like I see the intention with it, but I think it is best served so that we don't get into another like half an hour debate on trying to amend the bylaws. Best served for the next Senate, and if a person on the ad hoc committee right now runs again and thus wins their election and wants to run to be a chair of the new special committee, I think it's up to the Senate to discuss and debate it and make the point that, hey, I was on this one last year, I should be the chair this year. I think it's just best served for the next Senate.
Any other discussion on the bill as a whole? Senator Sitzman.
Also, the point was made earlier that I think, echoing what Senator Pugh said, I think experience and continuity matters, but also the point was made before, I forgot who said it, that it could be in the incoming class of senators, there are people who are better understand diversity and inclusion on campus, who would be perhaps better as a chair than if all of the current members of the committee got knocked out of election except for one. And well, let's say that person wouldn't be as good as the chair of the incoming class. So I feel like there is some good that this proposal is going for, but there's so much that could happen that we don't want to write it into the law.
Any other discussion on the bill?
I move to vote on this bill.
Okay, there was a motion to vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of moving to vote, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, that is a 2/3 special, so we are going to vote on this legislation now. Okay, all those in favor. This is a 2/3 special because it does amend the bylaws. So all those in favor of passing Bill 1617-023, say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, bill's passed. Okay. on to Bill 1617-024. Clerk will report the legislation by number and title.
Bill 1617-024, a bill to improve physical accessibility on campus.
So this legislation was referred to the Committee on Student Advocacy, however, they were not able to meet. So we're going to move on to public comment. Any member of the public wish to speak at this time? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and esteemed senators and members of the executive board here. At the beginning of the meeting, I noted that 2 errors in parliamentary procedure were made. Since then, 19 more have been made. In my 3 years of experience as a parliamentarian, generally 1 error costs about 2 minutes, so I'd say about 45 minutes of this meeting could have been saved had the assembly properly followed the authorities which they govern them. President Dumpson made a comment. Her goal is to ensure that student government does things. The student government is not going to do things they cannot abide by the rules that will make them efficient, that will really allow them to cut through procedural, excuse the unparliamentary language, procedural BS, and really get to the heart of matters that are before them. The idea of a parliamentarian is not to ensure that the Senate is wasting more time on trying to adhere to some strict parliamentary authority. The idea of a parliamentarian is to ensure that the Senate is able to address the issues it needs to address as efficiently as possible. That the Senate is able to use the parliamentary law to their advantage, not be used by that parliamentary law. And so I'm going to just suggest to the Senate that during good of the order, a motion be made to recommend to the President that a parliamentarian be appointed as soon as possible. And I'm grateful for your consideration. Thank you.
Any other for public comment? Okay, we're going to go into good of the order. Does anybody wish to speak? Senator Gale by proxy, whatever.
I'm going to do well.
Okay. Director Case.
Only thing I wanted to say was, in the hopes that it's remembered, I wanted to reiterate Senator Grant's argument that the next chair of this committee should be someone from the ad hoc right now. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I really, really want whoever is elected in the next Senate and the 13th to remember the validity behind her point. And so when the debate is had, of course, it's a fair debate. All candidates should be considered. That if any of you seek out re-election, you will assist Senator Grant in reminding the new senators of that point.
And we're going to the order. President Thompson.
Yes, so I just wanted to respond to your comment. So it's not to say that I am neglecting my responsibilities by not appointing a parliamentarian. That's not what that is. Right now, as an executive board, we're going over all of these documents because there was a lot of transition that has been going on, which I'm sure you all know of. We have a new director of student activities. We have a lot of new things. 3 out of the 4 of us on the executive board are in the position, so we need to make sure we, as an executive board, have a firm understanding of our obligations under our current documents. But it's also to say that Senate and all branches of student government are also working diligently to understand that we have bylaws and documents that are in place that we all need to be working on and making sure that we're brushing up on. So it's not to neglect or say that I haven't been working on this, but it's not enough to just put in people right now and appoint people if we need to make sure that we're doing everything by the book. And that's what we're trying to do right now, which is what is taking it away, is making sure that we're taking our time working diligently in order to do that. I will be sending you an email later on this week, but also we're making sure that we are publicizing our vacancies right now with JSEP and parliamentarian, and what we're going to be doing recently, coming up this week, because it's put on the website just last week. We're going to be doing strategic and targeted marketing as well, so that we can ensure that members of the AU's community, not just those in the SG bubble, but members of diverse communities across AU's campus, have the ability to pursue these positions if necessary, if they choose to. So I don't think that it's enough for me to just appoint a parliamentarian right this second if we do not have a pool of more than one person that has applied. I think that we need to make sure that we're making the best decisions across the board for student government in the long run, and to rush and make and making that decision, I think it's going to do us more harm in the long run than right now. So I think we can
Anybody else want to go to the order? Senator Pugh.
I have a quick few points to make. One, I wanted to give a shout out to Caribbean Circle, who put on a fantastic event yesterday. I got to see, I was there for like the first hour. It was really well attended. It won by the time I left, so that was very nice to see. Well done, Vice President itself, for putting on a great event. Well, ASU co-sponsor. And then also, I am meeting with the Elections Commissioner this week to go over the election policy book for this upcoming cycle. And that's on Wednesday at 11 in the Senate office. If anyone would like to join me in discussing the policy book itself or raising issues about making the elections a more diverse candidate pool, come meet with us and we can discuss that. I'd be more than happy to entertain any suggestions that any senator or e-board or any public member has. And then third, I wanted to put out the comment that I think it'd be a really good idea for student government as a whole to send out a mass email or maybe work with the targeted marketing to publicize to everyone what remaining positions we have. That way, because I know we have a JSEP chair that still needs to be filled and things like that. So I think we need to get those filled because we have elections coming up soon. And I want to wish everyone a happy Sunday and have a wonderful week of school.
I just like to, just say I hope everyone has a good week and good luck with midterms. I also just want to announce that the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion will, good midterm season, if I misspoke, sorry. Yeah, the Committee of Diversity and Inclusion is definitely going to meet this week, by latest like early next week. So if someone wants like updates on that or like wants to be in that email chain, please message me or text me.
We talk about transparency in the Senate and having, as student government, and having the public know like what we do and how we do it. And I think at the bare minimum, that conversation and that progress needs to include transparency within the body, because as I've been working on bill number 24, I was on the agenda today. I've had a challenging time figuring out people to talk to, and I'm trying to say these in the nicest way possible. But specifically about the committees, since it was referred to the CSA, I've been looking to see who the chair is, and I can't find it anywhere. So that I could ask somebody, yeah, but I'm saying this more for the benefit, like perspective of seeing what the public might not be able to find, if even I can't find something in the Senate. So I feel like that is a good perspective when we're talking about transparency to the public in general.
Okay. Anybody else going to the order? Go ahead.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank the Senate body for finally pushing to get the special committee passed, because I know I wanted to shout out Yami as well, who really tried pushing for it last year. And I know there was some issues with it, and thank you to Senator Pintar for working with me on actually figuring out some of the actual language to establish this, and thank you for all the amendments that were made. I'm really looking forward to next session. Hopefully the undergraduate Senate will do a lot with this session.
Anybody else for the order? Okay, sweet. If there's no further business, meeting's adjourned.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I gotta remember to do this.
No, fantastic.
I just sent you my email though, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, add me to the
Yeah, everyone's on the way to be on.
I don't know.
Hello. How are you today? Meeting is being scheduled that day. I apologize. But I can do it.
I know.
My hands.
We're so, why don't we decide right
I
now?
was just sitting back here.
What is your availability tomorrow? Is,
Okay, ready?
something informal, like that?
Okay, wait, so what about?
I'll send out an email about that, at 6, when we announce
Okay,
the
what did we
results.
do?
Or,
Okay, so let me put it in my schedule.
So I gotta figure out what's gonna be on that agenda.
Thank you.
Fine.
There's some policies that actually is crossing it over.
What'd you say?
Like that's like.
I don't know. So the other class, right, then it's gonna be a second.